Welcome back to Taking the Reins. We're sitting here today at VHM Racing headquarters with Vaughan Marshall. Vaughan Marshall has been at the top of the trainers' ranks in the Western Cape for many a decade. Vaughan, thank you for spending some time with us. We've got a lovely new show which we're airing just to get piquing a little bit of racing interest, especially as we head up into the season. We have spoken to Justin Snaith just prior to you. Easy act to follow. He had a lot to say about everybody, which I'm sure was par for the course.
It's customary.
And we'll follow the same theme. What we'd like to touch on a little bit with you first is a bit of your history. I mean, you've been a licensed trainer now for how many years? Can you remember off the top of your head?
42, Justin.
42 years. So an exceptionally long term of service to the game, and exciting thing with that is you've had many a top horses pass through your hands. And along with the theme and the topic of what we're going on here, obviously we have a completely rejuvenated programming this season with stakes races, and we've had the Hollywood Bets Guineas come out now with an increase. Last year we ran for 750, this year we're running for 2 million, which is a massive increase. And we want to talk to you a little bit about your potential horses for those races going forward. But before we get there, let's rewind a little bit, because you yourself are the second winning most trainer of the Cape Guineas. Dean Caname has trained, I think, 6. Mark de Kock, funny enough, as a raider, has trained 5, and we were chatting before coming on, you've trained 5 as well. So fantastic record in the race, of which your third winner was the mighty Captain L, who I'm sure, as I've heard press releases and interviews with you in the past, you seem to tip a lot of your successes in your career to him. So just touch base with us on Captain L, what he was like to train. How good was he? Was he the best you've trained, or was he a better stallion than he was actually a racehorse? Give us a little bit of info on Captain L.
Justin, I hate comparing horses, and I'm not one to compare one with the other, because decent horses are always good horses in their own right. But Captain L was an extremely good horse, and one loses sight of the fact that when he won the Guineas, he was drawn 16 out of 16, and after winning the Guineas, I took him to Durban, and he got a lung infection. And he ran 2 disappointing races in Durban, so we packed him up and brought him back here. He'd lost 1/3 of his lung capacity through this infection, and that's why we reverted to sprints, and he won the Merchants, and he won the Diadem. And then he ran 5th in the Flying Championship, which they were too short for him, really. So, and then by February of that year, of his 4-year-old career, he was already on the farm waiting to go to stud. But, to tell you how good he was is very difficult for me, because we never ever tested him.
Got to the bottom of him, yeah.
He won over a mile, and who's to know? Maybe he would have gone 2,000 meters. His progeny are certainly going to 2,000 and sometimes a little further. So there's no reason why he wouldn't have done. But he was a very, very good horse, and a fantastic horse to work with.
Fantastic. And then obviously, in terms of lineage, I mean, in the years that followed through, I mean, if I think off the top of my head, in terms of your run, you have the stellar run of sophomore horses every year. When it sort of goes from the Langerman into the early 3-year-old races, you seem to find these horses all the time. And there was a run, almost like an every year type of thing, where you exposed the son of Captain L. I think back to William Longsword was obviously one, then into Tapper North, into One World, and then even closer now into Linebacker, who's obviously by captain of all. So one thing I think about, which an outsider looking in would notice when you have a keen eye on bloodstock, is you're definitely one of those trainers who, despite maybe not buying all the sales toppers all the time, when it comes to the sophomore crop, you tend to have 2 or 3 out of the top 5 horses every year, which is quite uncanny. So one thing I wanted to touch on with you is that buying process. Are you heavily dependent on following successful stallions like you did with Captain L? Are you a heavy specimen man? Do you look at female line? What is your process? Because, without harping on it, to come up even post Captain L days, post Mayfair days, you went to the sale, you bought Seeking the Stars Linebacker in that stellar year that you just had with like 3 or 4 really top 3-year-olds, and that without going to spend $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million on each horse. Take us through that process.
Well, I think one has to obviously take note of pedigrees. I mean, if you went to try and buy a horse without analysing the pedigree, you wouldn't have much success. But I think I put more emphasis to begin with on the individual. And I heard of, and I got some advice many years ago from a very wise trainer called Reggie Passmore. And he came to the yearling sales with me one day in Johannesburg, one of my first yearling sales. And he said to me, let's go around the sales yards, which we did, you know. And I pulled a horse out and I looked at him and looked at him and looked at him. And eventually he turned around to me and he said, do you like him? I said, not particularly. He said, well, why did you waste your time? And why did you look at him for so long? He said, pull him out. If you don't like him, put him straight back in. And I've always been of that.
A lot of first impression.
Yeah, first impression is a lasting impression. And I mean, I've bought horses that are light below the knee and bad hocks. And he used to say to me, take your catalogue from the knee to the hocks, put it like that, blot it out if you like the individual buying.
Really? Okay.
You know, and that's, he bought a lot of, or he had a lot of those golden thatchers in the early days, which if you'd been a proper confirmation boy, you would never have taken them, you know. So I've used a lot of that advice over the years, and possibly that's why I've got away with not spending big money and things like that, where some people might...
so horses that may have been scratched off the A-list,
that
you've kept on, and those have become A-runners. Yeah.
Sure, and also I've also been a big follower, rightly or wrongly, of first season size, I think, because to suit my
budget.
My budget, yeah. You know, some people are skeptical about buying first season size. I just think of Casey Tibbs and horses like that, Captain L when he first started, you know, Jetmaster, when they first went, yeah. So you know, there are lots of reasons why you can go for cheaper horses, and that's been one of my ploy all along. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously over the years, I mean, you've been supported by some fantastic clientele, and you have very good affiliations with a lot of the stud farms, which obviously helps a trainer get to the level that you've performed at over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think you know, obviously. Yourself, a lot of trainers had a lot of horses from, you know, from the Mayfair speculators group, and then when they moved on, a lot of trainers' businesses took a big hit, and to the point where some ceased to exist afterwards. Whereas you've taken that core group of owners that you had, built on it, and you can see you're still churning out the top level of horse, which I think is indicative more of the horse that you're buying than the actual budget that you were given to buy. So, you know, with that theme, I come back to your owners that you have at the moment. You obviously, I mean, Ken and Jane Truter are stalwarts of your stable. I mean, I make jokes with a few people at the races. You know, they're more commonplace than furniture in the 1881 lounge. I mean, they're racing regularly all the time. But Ken also, obviously, he's a horseman and he has a breeding background. But he seems to have a lucky touch with horses as well. Is it a lucky touch? Is he a pain to work with at the sales? Is he very strong on what he wants?
No, he's not. He's actually, you know, he sneaks at my catalogue, and if I'm not at the sale, he says to John Costa, "Why isn't Vaughan here?" Well, you know, so no, we get on very well. And besides just being a client, he's possibly my greatest pal, and we get on very well. But you know, and Rakesh Sagulam has been an absolute stalwart in our yard as well. And as you said, the demise of Mayfair speculators, I think at that time I had 20 of their horses, and I was very fortunate, and not as fortunate as some other people, that within months I'd filled those boxes. Yeah. So it was a quick recovery, and get on and let's put the past behind us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a tricky time in racing, of course. John Costa, another person that you have a long-standing relationship with. The farm has been, I mean, if I think back to those names that I reeled off the top of my head, I mean, a large chunk were bred at Claverflay. You obviously, you look at their horses with the intention of buying as many nice ones as you can from there.
Yeah, I think so. You know, you've always got your favourite studs in that, and possibly my first Group 1 winner was from Claverflay, so was sold through Claverflay, shall I say? But I think then you have got an affinity with that stud, and you go back, and I just like the type of horse that John breeds, and the way that he brings them up, and you know, One World, Tappenoth was by Captain L, but he's the same sort of horse, and then William Longsword, and Seeking the Stars was from there. So you know, I like a particular type of horse, and they suit me. The Claverflay horses I really enjoy.
Yeah, no, John is a fantastic breeder. I mean, the record of the stud speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
Before we get on to present and the season going forward, it would be remiss of us not to chat about the team that you've had behind you. Now, we were chatting to Adele earlier. She's been with you, geez, how many years would that be
11
now?
years now.
She came from, she was at Glen Cotson before,
right.
and she's been with you ever since, and obviously
Yeah.
a backbone of the yard, especially if you're traveling to KZN.
Absolutely. I could never do without her, We have our moments where we let go and blow up a bit, but she's a stalwart and she gets on, and I could never ever do without her.
Yeah, no, she's an absolute soldier. I think having those, being in a work environment myself now, not just working for myself, working with a team of people, I think it's important that, and we have had this relationship with Lawrence Verners and Johan and even Dr. Andreas Jacobs. I think if you're working towards a common goal, every now and then there's a bit of heat, and you've got to be able to have a blow at each other and not take it personally and want to quit the next day, because otherwise there's no real room for proper working procedure. One thing we can't let you off the hook for, though, so I've been waiting for this one for a few weeks. We all going to have our day of reckoning. We go up to St. Peter at the pearly gates, and we're going to have to answer for our sins. One sin that we have to ask questions about in your regard, the racing industry, is MJ Byleveld. You've kept him around. He retired from the saddle. We thought we were rid of him, but you're still keeping him around. So MJ Byleveld rode for you for the best part of a decade, met winners.
10 years, 11 years in fact.
Fantastic guy, good crack in the jockey room. He's been a loss to your stable since he's moved on.
He was a huge loss, but as every day goes by, you realise how much.
MJ's a workhorse, and
nothing was too much trouble for him, and he would ride work. If a race morning, he was here.
Yes.
He just never missed, and honestly, a salt of the earth.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, he was an absolute fantastic. He's so much so that he's now a registered stable employee. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you got to keep him at work. I mean, he's been bothering the cows on the farm for way too long.
Exactly. Well, I paid for his license, his registration, and he said, "No, I'll pay." I said, "No, let me pay. Then I've got a hold on you."
Good man. I know he's doing a lot of work with the jockeys and helping them out at the moment. So hopefully he can teach them some of their work ethic, because seeing a jockey at work these days is a bit of a solar eclipse.
Absolutely.
We're getting there. We're working with the guys. But going forward, so obviously exciting times. I mean, it's quite incredible how quickly things can happen. I mean, 2 months ago, if we went to Durbanville and ran in a classified stakes, we'd be running for 55 grand, and a maiden would be 65 or 70. When we now go back to Hollywood Bets Kenilworth in November, classifieds are going to be worth 100, maidens are going to 120. We're doubling prize money, literally. So I think one of the big reasons at looking at all that was obviously needing to grow the horse population. We had to address the economics of ownership and how imbalanced it was. So I think across that level, it's been looked after, but it's equally vitally important to look after our excellence in terms of statistics, trainers championships, breeders championships, stallion championships. The high level performers need to be rewarded financially. And what we've seen now with the program going forward, I mean, we got the Selling Cup back again this year. That's $500,000, which is essentially our Guineas trial. I mean, last year the Guineas was $750. Now its trial is pretty much the same money. Hollywood Bets have stepped in. Obviously, we touched on with the Cape Guineas at $2 million. The Phillies World Sports Betting Guineas has gone up from 500 to $1 million. So we're seeing vast changes in this program. Obviously, there's the WSB Gold Rush this year, which we'll touch on as well. But not without pointing as a plug to the prize money, what I'm trying to get to is your program for these horses going forward. So off the top of my mind as a racing guy, we're looking at horses coming through. I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your leading sophomores at the moment, probably Street Outlaw, who we saw ran a cracking good race again now at Hollywood Bets Durbanville, and Dave the King, who looks like a top horse. Yeah,
he is a top horse, and if you look at the graduation on Saturday at Durbanville, it looks like a Group 1 field. They're two very good horses. A horse called Lord William, he's not far behind. And then I've got a colt by Pomodoro Scalini. He's not too far behind either. But those two are certainly the standouts at the moment. Yes.
I think the interesting thing with Dave the King, I mean, he's a half brother to Glenn's horse, that My Bestie, who doesn't get much further than 1400. And obviously your horse is by Global View. I mean, is he? Do you think he's going to get a mile? And his racing style, first time out when he almost came out with exceptional cruising speed, and you could see, and that's where my ears pricked watching him the first time, was that he got there and he was doing, and he just looked like he was doing it so easily.
Well,
And,
that's where he's so deceptive, Justin. That race you're talking about, he got to the front, and I thought, because he'd never ever shown that at home, obviously. But I don't grass my horses before they run, or very seldom. So he'd been through the pens, and that was the only time he saw the grass. And he jumped out as if he'd done it all a good few times, and he mastered it and started to kick again. And then they moved up to him, and I thought, oh, they're going to swallow him up. And then he just kicked again. So I certainly have got no doubt that he'll go the mile. He's a free running type of horse. It wasn't my intention to run him at Durbanville, I must be quite honest. I'd preferred it to have been a graduation at Kenilworth. But let's wait and see. It's a tough field. And it'll be interesting to see how he handles it.
Yeah, for sure it will be. And I'm glad you touched on Scalini, because he was a horse that I thought, he ran a cracking good second, was it? Third behind Lightspeed?
Yes.
By Pomodoro, should go a trip. He's out of a trippy mare who could gallop. An early fall also from Claverflay.
Yeah.
And I think Lord William as well, who's a proven horse already at stakes level, they are all Gold Rush candidates.
Scalini's not, unfortunately.
Scalini not.
No,
So you've got Dave the King and you've got Lord William.
Yeah.
How are you sitting at the moment for slots and that type of thing? Have you looked at that? Does Ken have a slot?
He has got a slot, yes.
So Ken has a slot, so you...
And Rakesh has got a slot, so, we've got we've got a colt here that, in fact, he's a gelding now. He ran twice in Durban and ran 2 very good seconds, and we hadn't stepped on him. Now he's just got over his gelding, so we're going to start stepping on him, and hopefully on the 12th of October he can win, and then he looks a very, very nice smart horse. It was called Professor Snape.
Professor Snape, okay.
I think he's a very, very nice horse, so we'll see. But he's got Ensuing as well, who's had a couple of decent runs, but he had a few problems. He was a rig, and it was hurting him, so we've done the up there, and so we're hoping to get him back before that. So, yeah, things are looking bright.
Okay, so you've got a few horses for then. There's a few potential slots that you can so-called negotiate over to get horses in. Okay, fantastic. So, once again, a very encouraging Marshall sophomore crop. The old guys, Seeking the Stars, Linebacker, Rascallion, I see he's still here in the yard. What is the program looking like? We've obviously got the Lormrans King's Plate this year, and obviously the WSB Met after that. Is that what you're looking for with Linebacker?
Yes, Justin, I am. All the, and Black Nap is also there, but we went to Durban with a very reduced team as far as top horses, because all these horses were injured. They've just come back. Seeking the Stars got injured after one run in KZN, so he's out for the summer season, unfortunately. With Linebacker, I think we'll go the same as we did last year with the Green Point, then the Queen's Plate, and then we'll sit and see about the Met. Rascallion, certainly, I think his mission will be the Met, but he did have a problem, so we've got to be careful with him there to get him there.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, great. Thank you very much, Vaughan. I think in closing, just it's been fantastic to have you obviously here as a trainer in the Cape. You're doing great things for us because you've got a good bunch of horses and they run regularly, which is important. I think you've obviously been part of the new vibe that's been at racing. Have you felt that going into Cape Racing's ready to run sales, and the sales going forward, there's a bit more interest from owners looking to buy horses? How have you found it?
Yeah, no, without a doubt there's a huge interest, and we've said all along, unfortunately economics didn't allow us to do it, and once you reduce stakes and you reduce race meetings, then the people go out the back door, and the only way you can keep people involved is what you and Cape Racing and Greg Bortz and Hollywood have done, put the money in, and then people all of a sudden are attracted to come back into the game. I've had people that got out the game, and now all of a sudden they're showing interest to coming back, which is a very good sign. And really, I must thank you and Greg Bortz and Hollywood Bets for Cape Racing. You just don't understand what you've done. It's just revived the whole business. It really is fantastic. And even more so is the way that you've redefined the program. You know, for 30 years, it was exactly the same program. And I always kept saying, guys, we've got to change something. You know, even if you change the name of the races or something like that, just so that it looks as if it's something else, you know.
Spice it up.
Spice it up, And that's exactly what you've done, and it's a wonderful innovation. It really is.
Yeah, thank you, Vaughan. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, and obviously we've got to thank Greg and Hollywood with their cash injections. And I think the exciting thing for me, and I mentioned this to Justin, is that these things that have been rolling out now, we started working on 2 months ago when we walked through the door, and they're pretty much getting rolled out. But what's more exciting is I know what's going on behind the scenes that's still going to come out in the next few months. And I really see Cape Racing building up as you know, a capital of racing here again. And you know, the breeders are bouncing again, sales prices are up. I mean, the yearling market has been unbelievable. To have the 2-year-old sale up 56%.
No,
I mean, it's just ridiculous. So
absolutely.
the market is great. People are smiling again, and you know, I think the operators and the team around it are putting the product there with the horsemen, and now it's up to the industry to follow suit. One obvious, you were touching on, a bit of a spice up of the program. The 2-year-old series is started this season. It's something that I looked at, and I just thought, you know, numerically, we've got a lot of horses that are taking a little bit too long to start their careers as maidens, and it's having a bit of a knock-on effect on our racing population as we get to this part of the year. We don't have as many winners in the system as we possibly should do, and we have super huge maiden fields. So I think following suit with a few other places, we've pumped some money into the 2-year-old races. We've created the Summer Juvenile Series. I mean, the Trippy Stakes on Lormrand's King's Plate Day last year was 110 grand maiden. This year it's for 350. The Summer Juvenile listed race on WSB Met Day was, I think, 175. It's now 500,000. And then obviously the nursery at the end of the season on Johnson Workwear Derby Days for 750. So that's quite like a cash-rich 2-year-old injection. You are not slow on your 2-year-olds historically. How do you, obviously it's still very early now, but did you get the juveniles off the farm a little bit earlier than normal? Do you have some horses for those races?
Yeah, I certainly will have something, but you know, over the years, I've changed my plan with 2-year-olds, and I think you might have noticed it over the last couple of years. But we certainly got some really nice horses, and we'll be competitive in those races. But at the moment, I'm about 20 juveniles short to what I normally have.
Okay.
So, you know, we've got to get busy at the ready to run and try and get a couple more. But yeah, we'll be competitive in those races.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Vaughan, thank you very much. It's been fantastic. I thought we had you when our executive producer extraordinaire, Troy Finch, and I started with plotting this program. We had you high up on the list for one of our early guests. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And good luck for the rest of the season. I hope you manage to do well as you always do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.